The Scottish Prism, the programme that is unapologetically pro-Scottish independence and anti-Westminster rule. Everything we say here is viewed through a Scottish prism. Brought to you by Barhead Boy.
Hi folks, welcome back to Through a Scottish Prism, the weekend special. I hope you and yours are all well. It's been another heck of a week in politics, and we've got lots to discuss, so I'll not waste any time and bring in the squad. And the Coatbridge Cavalier is actually in the Côte de Brig in the Scottish Riviera. Mr. Boswell, how are you, my friend?
Splendiferous. Back in the Brig and loving it because I'm mid-session. I had 2 sessions last night. I had a mate's 60th upstairs in Owens. Mother, I've got 2 favourite pubs here. Obviously the Eagle Inn, which is the heart of the independence movement, rapidly becoming with Rab Slavin. And my brother-in-law owns Owens, which is great. Said the family party downstairs and upstairs, my mate's 60th. It got a bit messy. And I'm heading off to another do at Celtic Park tonight for the Billy McNeil.
Where?
I know, you're not happy about that one. But it's a charity.
An invite, funnily enough.
No, oddly enough. We didn't send you one, Roddy, because you may be not so keen on that one. But no, happy days. Back in the Brig.
Brilliant.
Amongst the best people on the planet.
Well, we've got lots to talk about, Phil, and I'm sure you've got lots to say. And we'll get on to that and the midweek show later. And also, we've got there down in the borders our favourite doctor, Dr. Yvonne Ridley, here to apply political medicine.
Hi,
Yvonne, my friend, how are you? I'm well, always better for seeing you.
The brilliant borders, the sun is shining. It's a great time to sort of hit the road in a camper van and go for it.
And I might know you can get one cheap fairly soon at an auction. Yeah, but keep it secret. Up there in Clickmanshire, maybe in her camper van, is our Eva. Eva, you're not in the camper van, but...
No, I'm static this week, Roddy. Unfortunately, I'll be out in the garden, so no, we're not mobile, but looking forward to being mobile again sometime soon for holidays.
Nice to see you've got Mr. Salmon with you there. How are you doing, Mr. Salmon, sir? Nice to see you. And joining us as well, by public acclaim and demand, it's Mr. Lloyd Quinnan of the SNP.
Hey.
Quinnan, how are you?
I'm
nice
very
to see you
well.
again.
Nice to see everyone. Yeah.
Good, yeah, you're looking good. The sun's shining at your back there. The sun, as my gran used to say, the sun shines on the righteous.
My mother might not agree with you there.
Yeah, well, it's obviously shining on others too.
Gosh.
So here we are. But before we get started, folks, I just want to make a couple of announcements rather. But just to remind our viewers, now we are doing a special, when we say live Prism, e.g. a live audience, wouldn't be much good with a dead audience. So it's a live Prism at the spring conference of the Alba Party in Inverness on the 6th of May. Now, there's also, after we're finished, if you like, the opening act of the Hoolie, which is being organised by Alba up there in the Highlands, where they're selling tickets. Now, you might see the tickets advertised. You don't have to go to the whole bank of Shugle. We are, but you don't have to. You can come up, listen to the Prism show, absolutely free of charge. Make a donation if you like to the night or to anything else that's going there, anyone else that's looking for funding, and then just leave or stay on for the Hoolie. So we've got that, and that's in the Beaufort Hotel at 6:30 on this Saturday. Now that's it. I forget it now. The other last thing I've got to remind is if you haven't already hit the subscribe button, please do. And if you like what you hear throughout this show, hit the like button. Right, that's everything out the way of housekeeping. Ladies and gentlemen, let's start this week. Again, it's been the most, I think the last 5-6 weeks have been the most active political weeks in Scotland since the referendum. And we heard official confirmation, Eva, this week that indeed, after flip-flopping one way and t'other, Humza Yousaf has decided that the main task of the SNP Scottish Government is to fight the Section 35 of the UK Government. How did you take the news?
I was not at all surprised and not a little disappointed, actually. I think in common with everybody here, as well as all of our viewers, and at least half of Scotland, I'd love to see the Scottish Government take on Westminster, but I'd love them to pick their battles a bit more sensibly. And the battle that we should be having with them is in relation to the Constitution, and it's about independence. But that's the dirty word that's only mentioned, mainly by the SNP when they know that there's an election campaign underway and there's so I was disappointed, in part actually because it's a case that he's not hugely likely to win. I'd be interested to know, but we never will know, what the legal advice is that he's had. But it can't be particularly good, because you'll see that the opinion of lawyers is divided. But in the main, the legal profession think that it's not an action that's likely to meet with success. But politically, it's very much a hot potato, because it's something that the vast majority of the Scottish public do not want. The SNP are trying to claim that this gender recognition reform was in their manifesto. It was a bland reference to amending the law. Nowhere in their manifesto was there any mention of self-identification. And there are two angles to this that really upset much of the women's movement in Scotland. And one is self-identification means that any man can claim to be a woman on his say-so alone. And you know the fankle that the Scottish Government, especially Nicola Sturgeon and Keith Brown, got into in relation to Adam Graham, the double rapist, because they couldn't bring themselves to call him a man, albeit that we know perfectly well that's what he is. And the other difficulty is the Scottish Government line that they've taken more than once in court actions to the effect that a GRC changes your legal sex for all purposes. And those are the problems. And it's these aspects that lead Westminster to claim that this Scottish bill or act impinges upon matters that are reserved to Westminster in terms primarily of the Equality Act and the impact of it and how you manage issues surrounding the protected characteristics. So it's not by any stretch of the imagination an easy process. But I think what is worthy of note is it will not be a short process. The court will probably receive the paperwork from the Scottish Government on Monday. They'll grant a warrant for that to be served, in fact, on Westminster. There will then be a preliminary hearing, and matters will trundle on through the Court of Session. When that case finishes, there might be an appeal to the Inner House of the Court of Session. When that finishes, somebody might appeal to the Supreme Court. The entire process will take probably a minimum of 18 months, more likely a couple of years. It's going to cost at least 6 figures, maybe 7 figures. And in the real world, by the time the process has bundled its way to the end, we'll have had a general election. There might be a Holyrood election. The political landscape of the country will be different. And most upsetting for me is that over that entire period when the Scottish Government are fighting about this useless piece of legislation, they are not fighting for independence. Their priorities are wrong, and this is being done only to keep the majority that they've got as a working majority with the Greens. It's the green tail wagging the yellow dog, and it is not good for Scotland, and it's not good for our reputation. And I think it's a very bad move by Humza Yousaf. He should have listened, as he said he would, to other views within the party, and in particular, Kate Forbes and Ash Regan, and he should have decided against pursuing this legal challenge and instead had sensible talks about whether there was any way, even at this late stage, that the bill could be rewritten in Scotland with a Scottish decision and Scottish impact and Scottish views being taken into account, rather than leaving it to the courts and to Westminster. It's very disappointing overall.
Yeah, well, a supplementary question I'll ask to you, Yvonne, is because just at the end there, as Eva said, they could take it to Scotland and Holyrood amend it, make it more acceptable, and put it. But they've started putting out the information that that London won't accept any amendments or any changes to it, so there's no point in doing that. I find that hard to believe. How can they stop them amending it? And in fact, that would surely strengthen their case if they amended it and said, well, here we've amended it and you're still against then they might have a case for saying they're going against our democracy.
Look, it doesn't matter how much lipstick you put on this pig, it's still a pig. It's not acceptable to the public. But the real scandal, you know, we're heading towards a financial abyss, a global crisis in the economy. Women who are having to decide, do I eat or do I eat? And Humza Yousaf is going to spend £500,000 of taxpayers' money. That's going to be the cost. The only winners in this are the lawyers. In fact, it's cases like this that probably give lawyers a bad name. There's our Eva, who probably does more pro bono work than paid for work out of nothing more than compassion. And here is the Scottish government spaffing money up the wall, our money, at a time where we're facing a financial crisis. And, you know, if you look at the odds of Humza winning this case, you know, it's like looking at a racehorse. He hasn't got the form. The last 3 legal battles he's been involved with, including a private one in which he withdrew his own case over a nursery row, he hasn't won a single battle. It's awful. It's going to be like watching Doncaster Rovers go to Liverpool. It's awful. And it's going to be
this season. I'm not so sure, Yvonne. I'm not so sure.
Well, it's going to be humiliating, and it just makes me so angry, because I reckon when he pulled out of his own private prosecution against a nursery school, I reckon there'll have been a cost factor to that. And he'll have thought, I'm throwing good money after bad. With this, exactly the same principles, but hey, who cares? It's the people of Scotland's money.
Absolutely.
And the thing is, the majority of the people in Scotland wouldn't have gone into this case in the first place.
Correct. I mean, all the polls show that 70 to 80% of people oppose this. It's bizarre. Lloyd, when you were on last time, you were talking about the people that run in the SNP just now at the top, who don't have a core, who don't have a political core, and it's more of ideology than anything. As part of this Section 35, I was approached, attacked, I don't know, abused, whatever. It began with anyway, by one of the SNP faithful, who told me that unless you support this Section 35 and support the GRRB bill, you're a unionist. It's kind of bizarre.
It's absurd. It's absurd, Roddy. When we're living in this bizarre mirror world. It's, you know, it's like something out of Lewis Carroll, where they seem to think that by saying this is an attack on our democracy, when in actual fact Section 35 is a mechanism by which, you know, we as a party, the Scottish National Party, agreed to when we voted for the Scotland Act. It's a means of negotiation in a circumstance of difficulty, and this is a circumstance of difficulty. But what I'm more suspicious of, and it is partly to do with this fact that, you know, people at the top of the party don't have a core view. It's whatever they heard on GMS this morning. The problem in a situation like that is they develop their own groupthink. And I think there's no question, and I have a deep suspicion that this is part of the deal to get Humza in the job. He follows through on the GRR. And I think it's got little or nothing to do with our democracy. I believe that this is an influence, an external influence that was applied on Nicola Sturgeon, and Nicola Sturgeon has applied it on Humza Yousaf. And I find it somewhat interesting that the place where this ideology is at its hottest at the moment is the United States government. You know, actually within the US government, GRR is being applied in an extraordinary kind of a way. Now, that gives me these suspicions again that what's going on here is there's a deal being made, and it is come hell or high water, you get this ideological bill through the Parliament, you fight it in any way you can because it's part of some bizarre global idea that we seem to be under the influence of at the moment.
That will get the tongues wagging. It's certainly bizarre. But the other thing, Phil, is that putting on your politician's hat. Without a doubt, the GRRB bill was part of the downfall of Nicola Sturgeon. It's definitely without shadow of a doubt. Although, again, Holmes have contradicted it during the campaign. It's cost them members, although he said it gained them members. I don't see how you can lose 50 to 70,000 members and somehow say you're gaining members. So it's a hill she died upon. I mean, Holmes may be charging headlong into it, but is there no one in the whole of the SNP leadership who says, wait a minute, we lost 50,000 members. Nicola had to resign. This is a battle we can't win. Stop. I don't understand, Phil.
Well, it's very simple. One, they're all lying. Two, there are no more leaders within the real leaders. There's no real leadership within the current SNP management. They're all patsies. They're all doing what they're told, and they're all bought. Every one of you is corrupt, and to hell with you, every single one of you. And going on with what Lloyd was saying, this ideological GRR, it's quite often by well-intentioned, if perhaps slightly misinformed people. I've had many arguments, some of them heated, predicting this outcome, that this is the hill that Nicola would die on and the SNP would get into serious trouble on. And if you notice, what they're doing is putting minorities in place to effect ever more right-wing policies, because it's much harder to accuse Braverman of racism when she comes from a minority group herself. It's much harder to chase Rishi Sunak or Humza down on issues of racism, although he left himself wide open with that ridiculous case he did on in Scotland with the nursery school. So no, I am absolutely certain there are no true leaders within the SNP. Their number one leader is a sheep. Humza is useless. The guy, he's devoid of original thought. If he is, he lacks the courage to actually say it. And it's exactly as we've been saying all along. He's Mr. Continuation, Mr. Continuity, and the deal has been done with Perfidious Albion. This is what Britain wants. Britain wants a divided independence force. They want to divide and rule. It's how they do it. And they've sunk their claws into the Scottish government and infiltrated the SNP, and they maintain control over the SNP, which is why we've got to have the big clear out we keep talking about. That's the only way to put real leadership. The kind of stuff we saw under Salmond, and everybody who's bought into this, if you're telling these lies and you bought into it, you're not good enough and you need to be outed and ousted.
The other one, you talk about racism, if you remember the speech he made about there were too many white people in jobs of influence in Scotland. He was complaining about now. If you reverse that, can you imagine any white SNP, MSP talking about too many blacks or too many browns becoming the leader? I don't think so. It would be called out for what it was.
Or too many gay folk.
Yeah, exactly. He would be absolutely hung up there for the throat. I nearly said something else there. Eva, people do love it, particularly in social media, a good conspiracy. And the latest one being that Nicola Sturgeon, Mary Hunter, Mary Black, all sorts of head Hitchens in the SNP have removed the SNP branding from their bios on the Facebook and on Twitter. I mean, Philippa Whitward's another one. They've taken it away. Ian Blackford and many others have dropped SNP. And this all sort of ties in with what came out about the auditors this week, where for 6 months, Peter Morrell, we can only assume, hid from everybody else, probably including his wife. She probably doesn't know about it either. that there was no auditors in the SNP, and that this could result in all sorts of financial problems for the SNP. It's quite bizarre what's going on.
It's extremely serious what's going on. I think they've got, is it 47 days to get auditors and to have certificates provided to the Electoral Commission, etc. Otherwise, the short money at Westminster is at risk. And if they don't have that short money, then they can't pay their bills, they can't pay their staff. There's very serious problems. So that's from the Westminster Group perspective. The party obviously used the same auditors as the Westminster Group, and they seem to have resigned sometime last year. Now, what's interesting about this is that to get new auditors, those new auditors have to be satisfied on the information provided by the former auditors. And one might speculate that that's why there's been a difficulty in appointing somebody new, because they may not be terribly happy with the information that the former auditors have to provide about the state of the finances and the reasons perhaps why those auditors resigned. I mean, I think the official line is that those previous auditors just conducted a client review. But as always, there's more to this than meets the eye. The change in the biographies or the dropping of the SNP logo, I think, is a different explanation. My money is on Nicola Sturgeon not enjoying sitting on the back benches in Holyrood, and I strongly suspect that her resignation letter is already drafted, ready to be given to the presiding officer on Monday morning. Bearing in mind, obviously, that Holyrood's been in recess for the last couple of weeks, and the protocol is that the resignation is intimated to the presiding officer first. And I tend to the view overall that Miss Sturgeon has to resign because it's just become too difficult for her to contemplate sitting in the Parliament when she's no longer exercising real power or authority, and in effect, unfortunately for her, has become a laughingstock because of all the issues that there are to be considered, whether they're criminal, civil, poor management, secrecy, whatever it is. Her empire has crumbled, and the legacy that she leaves behind is not the legacy that she intended to leave behind. So it's very unfortunate, but if she's going to go, I think she has to go soon and be part of a bigger clear out, which hopefully will be being managed over the course of the next few days by Humza Yousaf, because if he's a real leader, he will get rid of the dross. He will ensure that new auditors are appointed to give the party a clean bill of health, because they tell the truth, and end speculation and the revelations that we've seen repeatedly, especially in Wings Over Scotland. That slightly takes me somewhere else as well. You remember when Humza was interviewed last week, he was asked, what did he know about the party finances? And he indicated he didn't really know anything about them. He'd read some stuff in the press, but he wasn't really sure about the party finances at all. Now, where in the world would somebody try to take over a political party or a business or some sort of entity and not know the state of the books? So he either knew and he's pretending he didn't know, or he actually didn't ask. And I'm not sure what's worse. So that makes me shudder to think that this is the kind of leadership that we've now got. Somebody that doesn't know the facts and figures of the party that they seek to lead. Very troubling.
But just a further supplementary to you, I mean, you covered why possibly Nicola Sturgeon removed SNP branding from her bio, but why Philippa Whitbread, Mary Black, Ian Blackford, and dozens of others? Why have they removed SNP from their bio?
I don't think Philippa Whitbread actually did, but some took it off and put it back on again. And I think that is either a distraction so that we're talking about that as opposed to looking at the real big issues, or it's because there is some truth in the concern that perhaps the SNP will soon cease to exist. There's been some rumours about petitions for bankruptcy, and I've seen a few screenshots where people are claiming that there's a petition ready to be lodged at court on Monday. Wouldn't it be ironic if there was a bankruptcy petition lodged at court on the same day as the Section 35 judicial review application? I mean, it's just got so utterly bizarre. So there's something in the mix, but quite what it is, who knows?
Now, there's also, to add to the conspiracy theory, a party, the Scottish Independence Party, was registered this week. Although I believe the ISP tried to use that and were not back to the Electoral Commission, but that's another conspiracy for another episode, folks. So give us your comments and see what you think. Yvonne, from that, we've got all this going on. What's happened to you with the auditors being hidden for 6 months from the rest of the party? Let's take it on face value. Humza didn't know, the NEC didn't know, no one knew except Peter Morrell, and obviously not his wife. She wouldn't know. She only lives with a man now and again. So she didn't know. Now that this has come out in the wash, if this was, again, I go back to, if this was a commercial enterprise, there would be serious repercussions for Peter Morrell. He'd be getting sacked, no severance pay, no reference, absolutely all sorts of things happening to him. But the SNP refused to even suspend his membership. It is bizarre, not even for the police inquiry, but for this act of the camper van and for hiding the auditors have left for 6 months, and you've not suspended his membership. Why? What hold does he have on them?
Well, it's like Animal Farm all over again. 2 legs good, 4 legs bad, and the snouts are in the trough. We know who's on the gravy train and who's not. And if anybody's, all of this secrecy, there's absolutely no need for it at all. If you want to know how much Peter Morrell gets every year from the SNP, it's 69,000 and something. It's just a shade off 70,000 a year. And that is a matter of public record. Anybody can find out about the finances of the SNP by going onto the Electoral Commission's website, and it's all there, laid out. They have 27 employees and an annual salary of £1.2 million, which averages out at about £47,000 a year. Quite a nice little earner. There's a huge question mark over the finances of the party. I was told that the auditors who had been with the party for more than a decade were becoming so suspicious that in the end they sat somebody in the office to physically try and observe what was going on. And after 6 months, that's when they raised a red flag and said, we can't work like this anymore, because they weren't finding out anything. And as Eva said last week, ignorance of the law is no excuse. Now, I don't know how the SNP have set up their constitution, but if it's anything like the Labour Party, everyone in the NEC, right up to the leader, is financially liable for the debts of the party, which could be why just about everybody in the NEC, I've been told, have sought legal advice. There's some people in there that are bricking it because the party, and again, these are, it's a matter of public record. You just go onto the website and the party is about £1 million in debt. I don't think that, if it was my bank account, my overdraft facilities would be withdrawn. The fact that the auditors have said we can't audit, we can't do our job. Most banks would withdraw any sort of banking facilities because they don't want to get caught up in a financial scandal as well. I don't know how much of that is true, but just go onto the Electoral Commission's website, and it's all laid out in glorious Technicolor, signed off by the poor sucker who's treasurer at the moment. I mean, who would want to take on that job? It's shocking. You know, we've got young doctors and nurses on strike on picket lines because they can't afford to eat. And this lot, you know, money has been no object. And then we're treated still, you know, this mushroom syndrome where we're kept in the dark and heaped manure all over the place. And that's how they're treating the SNP membership. I'm just amazed that that many people in the SNP have kept the faith. I'm really surprised. You know, 3% of the annual income of the SNP comes from those members who have sadly passed on, and this is their legacy. This is what's been left in a will. This is, you know, it's disgusting that they treat the membership's money with such contempt, as much contempt as they treat the taxpayers' money. And this self-entitlement is bile-inducing. And the secrecy, you know, as I say, anybody can go onto the website and get the information. It's there, readily available to the public. And I'm surprised that journalists haven't, you know, and I'm addressing those journalists who piled on to Alex Salmond during his trial. Every single one of them, and I'm including Leslie Riddick in this, they ought to get on their knees and say, we are so sorry. You know, the New York Times did it when they got 9/11 wrong. I'd like to see the Scottish media do the same and apologise to Alex Salmond, who, whether they like it or not, is the de facto leader of the independence movement. Why? Because he's never wavered. Many of our shows have been spent on discussing the legacy of Nicola Sturgeon. Well, I'll tell you what, she hasn't even got the bloody baby box to cling on to now. It's gone. Her legacy is, well, I'm getting the evils from the lawyer in our group now, so I'm not going to say, but really, the party is over in more ways than one.
I would just correct you in one thing. You referred to the Scottish media. There is no Scottish media. There's a foreknown media who are encamped in Scotland. They work for a foreign country. But that's just me being pedantic. Phil, with your business hat on as well as your political hat, two things about this. If we're going on about one, the camper van, oblique campaign van, hotel van, whatever you want to call it, for a party that, when they did the books that the auditors didn't like, had 97 grand in cash, it seems they paid anywhere between 80 and 110 grand for a camper van. Also, the auditors not being comfortable with it. Surely someone, I mean, people like the president, Mike Russell, were sitting in NEC, and surely this was brought up to the NEC.
Yeah, it should have been, had the protocols been followed and had the rules that were laid down been followed. But this has all been changed and disrupted. The checks and balances are clearly no longer there. And you know, you're looking at, I've been involved in numerous forensic audits. This was always going to be exposed. This what we're looking at is anyone who's involved in the administration of any business. There are certain, the accountant rules are very strict. The key thing you want in business is a good accountant, and you need to follow the rules, and you need to obey the rules, and you need to pay the correct amount of tax, and you must not do anything that, not just in a particular something like the SNP, it's not just that you must be unbiased. You must be seen to be unbiased. You've got to go. The standard of care is much higher in such circumstances. So, no, I'm absolutely no doubt that the auditors, we all knew they were going to get to the bottom of it. The accountants, you know, I mean, it makes grim reading. This is deliberate.
Well, can I
This
ask you
is
another question on that, just to expand it a bit, Phil? I mean, we've heard that, we know 69 grand is the income of Peter Morrell.
right.
Now, it's a wage probably higher than most of the people watching our show today. But by the time you take the deductions off, etc., how the heck could he afford to give the party a lend of £107,000?
Yeah, well, that's very interesting. And again, that's what a forensic audit can discover. A forensic audit can pursue the recorded figures in any set of books and take it right back to the payments made to individuals who worked for that organisation. And that's what I would do. I've been involved in numerous, and it gets a wee bit heated. But this is more evidence. The auditor's quitting. The cash flow, when you've got a cash flow problem, the last thing you do is spend cash. It's completely the opposite thing you ought to be doing, but it's yet more evidence the current SNP management are lying to us and continue. And that's Humza. Humza, you're a liar. And they continue to be patsies for the British state. This is how people behave. That behaviour you talked about with Murrell, Roddy, and the rest of them, and the arrogance of Nicola and all of the acolytes. This is how people behave when they believe they have impunity. That was the deal that Nicola and the other shysters, including Angus Robertson, did with the British state. They cut a deal with the British state, and the influence of the various offices of state. I believe the judiciary were even involved in this, and that's a hell of a thing to say or believe. And I believe they're all involved, and they're there to protect, amongst others, all the gravy train riders and the alphabet women for the stitch up of Alex Salmond. And when all along the state were stitching them up, because as I said before, you dance with the devil, you deserve what's coming. And this was always going to be the case. It was always going to be the case that perfidious album will divide and rule. And the best way to do it is to, I mean, if you can infiltrate, as we've said all along, you can infiltrate the IRA, which was the biggest threat to the British establishment. You can certainly infiltrate the wokarati and the clowns and these shallow, egotistical fools in the leadership of the SNP. So no, the hallmarks are all there of endemic corruption, and a full forensic audit will expose it. And they lack the protection now, and sooner or later, somebody's going to have to come in and do the full clear out, which is why everybody involved in the management is so desperate, including Ian Blackford. Ian used to be a mate, not good enough. You can't cover this up. You have to expose it and have to remove this cancer if you really believe in the independence of our people and our nation.
Strong words, Phil. Lloyd, Phil's absolutely right. There needs to be a forensic audit, among other things. But during the campaign for the leadership, Humza promised us he was going to do that. He was going to look at everything in the headquarters. He was going to change, he admitted that things were not being run properly and by his predecessor. It had to be changed. And he then appoints Sue Riddoch, who was Peter Morrell's deputy, as this acting CEO. He hasn't called, because they won't get another set of auditors unless they have a forensic audit and clear it. He has to do what he promised he would do, and he doesn't look like he's going to, does he?
No, but we saw throughout that leadership campaign, Humza was prepared to say anything, to get the gig. And in the end, this is what it comes right down to. If you don't have a political core, a clear set of values and standards, then you will say whatever you think needs to be said to get the job. And Humza's the classic example of this kind of showbiz politician, where the script's made every day brand new to suit whatever the circumstances are. But this is for me, this is just the product of having had a cult of personality and a climate of fear throughout the party. When you had a situation where you've got the husband and wife team effectively running things, the younger people invest them with this concept that they are the founts of all knowledge, and if you ask questions, you get in trouble, so you don't ask questions. If that happens for 8 years, you've effectively removed anyone with any critical abilities, which is my real problem with how are they going to fix this. There's nobody left who's either not implicated or has the wit and wisdom to actually get us out of this situation. In reality, I was asked this the other day, and I thought to myself, what's the only possible answer in this situation? It's effectively collective suicide. Humza phones up another leader of another independence party and says, right, we got it all wrong. Can we get back together as some kind of popular front, if you will? But that's not going to happen because these people can't think that way. They don't have the end goal, which is independence, clearly in their minds. Their end goal is getting through the day without getting caught with their hand in the till. And that seems to be where we're at the moment. And honestly, every 20 minutes, I change my mind from anger to sadness, from sadness to anger, backwards and forwards, backwards and forwards. And it's primarily thinking about people over the years, and also those poor people out there that are in the Scottish National Party who, frankly, have got no idea what is going on and why it's all falling apart, who've been paying their money. It's them I feel sorry for. And frankly, this lot up at Jackson's Entry, interesting name, they don't give a damn. They don't have a concept of the membership. And it all goes back to that phrase out of Ian McCann's mouth many, many years ago when they said, if the membership has an opinion, we'll tell them what it is. And that's what's been happening for so long. How do we get out the other side of it? Roddy, I really, really, really don't know, because I can't see a steady hand that can go on the tiller. I can't see it.
Not among this mob anyway.
No.
Part of that also of saying anything he could, Eva, on the campaign to get elected, reminds me he was going to be our first activist, not just our first minister. And the first opportunity he gets, which is May the 6th, put that up, please, Techie, the old May the 6th advert, to go on the all under one banner march for independence, he immediately reneges upon and says he's going to go and see Prince Charles become King Charles. He would rather go and see an English monarch being made than march with Scottish patriots and talk to Scottish patriots. That's fine. Here's my take on it, and I wrote about it this week, saying that he could have turned around to the movement and said, look, as First Minister, I'm really under an obligation. I don't want to, guys, but I've got to go. I represent everyone. And people might, like me, might not have liked it if he had said the following after that. But I have instructed my deputy leader, Shona Robinson, to lead at the front in my place. I have instructed every member of Parliament, every member of the Scottish Parliament, and every SNP councillor in Scotland who is available to go down and join in that march. And while I'm sitting in Westminster Abbey, the word will come down from Scotland that we're serious about independence. The crowd would have roared. The people would have loved them. We would have no criticism. But there's not a spad, it seems, in that building that can think strategically or politically to get them a victory like that.
But the reason you're thinking like that, Roddy, is because you're serious about independence. That's it. That's your core. It's the core of everybody here. The core of most members of the SNP, and it's certainly the core of every member of ALPA, and I would imagine also the ISP. But it's not the core belief of the current leadership of the SNP. You could probably count on the fingers of one hand the number of people within the cabinet now and the junior ministers who've ever even mentioned the I word in the last couple of years, because they only talk about independence being the solution when they when they get caught out with something that's gone wrong in Scotland, and it's blame Westminster again. The only answer to this is our independence, but they don't actually do anything about it. So, what Humza's done is he's appointed Jamie Hepburn as the independence minister. I've not seen any results from that yet. I've seen no press releases. I've seen no grand announcements about what the independence strategy is. So I'll go back to what the independence strategy should be, as you perfectly outlined. But ALBA have done 52 wee ALBA book events in the course of the last year. There's one in Arbroath this Thursday, the 20th. Alice will be speaking. Jim Sillars is on the panel. and Tasmina Ahmed Sheikh. That is what Scotland needs, a united independence front. Alec and Jim have not always seen eye to eye, but they are huge political beasts, and they're hugely significant. Their experience and their knowledge and their views are very, very important to our movement. Now, what could have happened is that somebody from the SNP could have shared a platform with them. And also, what could have happened is, and there's still time for it, is that Hamza could say, as you outlined, sorry, I've got to go down to London for this event, but yes, I do require all my people to be there in Glasgow. That can still be done. It won't happen because, as you say, Hamza hasn't got the political sense to understand that the priority for his party right now is showing unity and drive and courage and ambition. At the moment, it's a mess. We know that NEC are meeting this weekend. We know there are various issues that they have to talk about, as we've already outlined. There'll be a lot more that we have absolutely no idea about. So there's a lot going on. But if he wants to take the spotlight away from the rubbish of the last few weeks, the way to do it is exactly as you've said, and to bring the Scottish independence movement together. To not have grand announcements and appointments where people just get an enhanced salary, but to actually make things happen. It's not difficult, it's not hard. You do what we've been doing in Alba for the last couple of years. You talk about the benefits of independence. You talk about the need for independence. You speak every single day to people about the fuel crisis, the cost of living crisis, drugs deaths, deaths through alcoholism, issues in relation to education, social work, the NHS, and you point out that had we the full powers and the economic levers that our country deserves to have in terms of controlling our own resources and the use to which we put them, none of that would be necessary anymore. We could deal with poverty, but at the moment there's a lack of political will at the leadership of the SNP, and it's Hamza's job to recreate it. And in one swoop, with one stroke of a pen, he could follow your advice, Roddy, and that would be such a significant seminal event for our movement. On the 6th of May, that message would go out internationally. The Scots are on the rise, and that's what needs to be seen. That message has to be loud and clear. And if the SNP want to be part of the independence movement, they should do exactly what you've said. If they don't, we'll know that their motivation is not independence at the earliest opportunity.
Yvonne, it's usually, it's one of those political, inevitables. When a new leader's elected, or there's a party conference or a new leader's elected, there's a bounce, and that party gets an increase in support. We've had, well, it's not so much a bounce as a lead balloon landing in water with Humza. The polls have been horrific. It shows that there's about a 10% gap between those in Scotland who support independence and those who are willing to lend their vote to the SNP. Again, I go back to my point about the spads in Jackson's entry, or whatever the hell they keep them. Why is someone not saying, we've got a problem here, Houston? There's a 10% gap between people who want independence and they're not coming to us. And these opinion polls, which are showing Alba on the rise, we're on the drop, Labour's on the rise, we need to change direction. Why is nobody seeing that?
Well, I'm sure that they are, but out of sight of, and we're not going to hear it. The auditor who was put into Jackson's entry lasted 6 months, and he couldn't stand it any longer before he got out and raised the red flag. There's an air of self-entitlement among the SNP politicians, and I've no doubt among the SPADs as well, who, let's face it, most of them are just bits of kids who do as they're told and get very well paid for it in the meantime, as we've found out through the Electoral Commission website. Humza Yusuf he's not an idiot entirely. And he must look at the polls. He must look at the figures and see that things are not going his way. But is he listening to anyone? I don't know. He has a huge responsibility on his shoulders, as I said last week, not for only being the FM, but he's also the first Muslim politician of colour to take the FM's job. So if he fails, an awful lot of people will be hugely disappointed. At the moment, the polls are saying he is failing. And what I'm wondering about is, will the party survive to hold its next conference? Because, the conference, I saw it, and I'm sure you saw it as well, just changed into an entirely staged managed event over the years. And little community groups that used to have, and charity groups that used to have stalls inside the conference were priced out. Charged about £5,000 a stall, whereas before it was in the hundreds. It was a shocking thing to do. Will Humza listen? I would hate his job, actually, because he isn't independent. He's got Chief Mammy still sitting on his shoulder, whispering in his ear. He's the continuity candidates who's got the same old voices advising him. But I genuinely don't think he's a fool. And sooner or later, he has to snap out of it. And if he's got the survivor's instinct, he'll sack the entire NEC, he'll sack his advisors, and he'll start again with people around him who he can trust. Because at the moment, it's like watching frogs in a bucket all clambering over each other's backs to try and get to the top. It's so sad the way this party has been brought down and is crumbling around. It's like watching a car crash in slow motion. We saw the brakes failing more than a year ago. Anybody listening to back copies of Prism, the warning signs were there. Of course, the little journalist from the Express calls us a bunch of radicals. But it's funny, he tunes in every week to get a good story out of because what's coming out of here is reality. None of us are motivated by malice.
Or money.
Or money. I think that it's all, and most of our Prism listeners as well, remember the glory days of the SNP when it was a party of the people, when it was a beacon of democracy. And, no wonder there's so much anger out there on the social networks. And especially, I think it is beginning to resonate with the SNP. We've got SNP MPs now slagging off ALBA, the ALBA party, which was the sort of sole reserve of Pete Wishart, who's been very quiet. I don't know if he's changed his logo or not. He blocked me a while ago, so I don't know what he's got on his.
You're tempting me here, Yvonne. You really are tempting me.
Well, go for it.
My pal Pete. Phil, the clock's kicking on, and there's several other topics I really want to get through today. And one of them is this, another reason, when we're talking about challenging Westminster in the Section 35 and making the people see it's an issue. The one that got me this week, and I've always been anti-nuclear weapons, but is the UK government refusing to give the information on nuclear discharges or accidents that happen at Faz Lane, just 30 miles away from our biggest city and our largest populated part of Scotland. That's the kind of things that one should be pushing people towards independence, but that's the kind of things that our Scottish government should be kicking up a stink about, not putting men into women's safe spaces.
Yeah, true. And we've talked about this many times. As you know, I worked at Rosyth refitting military vessels and refurbishing them. And we know the threat that basically the whole Central Belt will be wiped out if there's an accident or a target. And if you look at the strategies, if there is a nuclear war, which we're heading to at the minute with the madness that with this Ukraine war and all of the idiots, the hawks and the murderers, the greed that means the military-industrial complex has to feed on war, and what they're doing to the poor Ukrainian people and killing Russians and hurting people is horrendous. But we're heading closer and closer to nuclear war. The tactical strategy for the Russians, if we did go to nuclear war, would be 2 nuclear strikes on the facilities. Not just the radar facilities, there's 5 of them spread across Scotland, but obviously primarily Coolport, Faz Lane. It's 2 missiles, it's 2 weapons in case one gets intercepted. And that wipes out all life in central Scotland. It's gone. And we're facing that because of perfidious Albion, and that risk continues because we lack the leadership to stand up to the British state and take it all on. No, absolutely disgusts me. Absolutely disgusts me. And you're now looking at, you see what's happening. They're now turning their guns on China with van der Leyen, who get her ass kicked. If you check euro used by the Chinese, absolutely brilliant. Fu Kong, the ambassador, he just came in and says he said diplomatically, I was a little bit disappointed, but his quote was, and I'll quote what he said, that speech contained a lot of misrepresentations of Chinese policies and Chinese positions. And I would say whoever wrote that speech for the President von der Leyen does not really understand China or deliberately distorted Chinese positions. That's what the press, the mainstream media has done on the Russian affair with Ukraine. It's why we still have nuclear weapons and why perfidious Albion and the West will never let us go. It just beggars belief that we continue to teeter towards the madness of nuclear war and our politicians aren't doing a damn thing about it.
I agree. Another thing, Lloyd, is I say that the clock's beating us, and I want to cram in some things, but there was what came through, and again, it was hardly mentioned in the media, and that is that the WASPI women have been granted a judicial review over the pension age, and possibly, if they win their judicial review, there could be a backdating of pensions, and quite rightly so. But it's been kind of mute. I would have rather that the Scottish Government had said, well, look, never mind the GRRB, we're going to help support the women throughout, not just Scotland, but throughout the country. We'll put our weight behind this. We'll bring this up in Parliament. We'll fight Westminster in that. Again, this would have been a political masterstroke. But
where was Mary Black? This was Mary Black's big thing when she went to Westminster. This was the thing she was going to deal with. She was going to make it front page news. She was going to build the barricades, and it's all gone nowhere. I mean, I find it interesting that the judicial review's been granted the week when France is burning because of the plan. Well, not the plan. He's done it by executive order to increase the age by 2 years to 64. Where's the comparison between what's happening in France and what's happening here? Where are the critical voices? Where are the outside of Kevin McKenna, where's anybody writing anything that draws us into the bigger, broader world? I mean, there's so much they could be campaigning on at the moment, but what I feel is that they're all too busy trying to find out what the hell's happening and whether or not they're going to find themselves in the guilty gang. And that seems to be the focus of everything at the moment. There's no interest in the broader politics other than to complain about the fact that Britain might make it a little bit more difficult for Angus Robertson to get into certain government buildings in foreign countries. You know, that's going to play well with people, isn't it? You know, we are moaning and complaining. The SNP goes to the barricades on the basis of, I can't fly to Rome. That's going to go down well with the electorate. But then again, it's another huge example of how completely and utterly out of touch these people are with the feelings of ordinary, normal folk.
It's Eva, the Lloyd's touched on it there. This thing with the British government, obviously they're watching what's happening in Scotland and sensing, you know, they can smell the blood of the animal in the water, sort of thing. And they've said now, from now on, you have to take permission from the UK before you do anything. But there'll still be SNP people who pulled me up, who said, stop saying it's a colony, Roddy. We're not a colony, really. Really? But you've got to get permission now from an English minister before a Scottish member of Parliament can do anything with a foreign land. It's another indication, is it not, Eva?
Absolutely. There's nothing else it can be. You know, peasants remain in thy place. Hudger wheesht. You know, 2023, and what's hitting the top of the charts, if we still have charts, is the most haunting, magnificent song, which shouldn't have had to be written, but must be heard, called The Clearances Again by Skippinish, featuring Donald Francis McNeill. And it's a protest song against highly protected marine areas invented by the Scottish Government under the influence of the Greens again, contrary to the wishes, the views, the needs, the aspirations, the knowledge, the experience of the people of the Highlands and Islands fishing communities. It is appalling that once again, local people, ordinary people, as Lloyd just mentioned, are being ridden roughshod over as the result of policies created and invented by middle class, green, aspirational politicians who wouldn't know one end of a fishing boat or a fishing rod or a fishing net for the other. It's not on anymore. Scotland's people need to fight against this. Get the Greens the hell out of that government, and please, every single viewer, will you buy, will you share, will you listen to and play at full bung The Clearances Again. I promise you, you can't listen to it without a lump in your throat. And what Scotland needs to do is to say no more. Remember the words that the Proclaimers, Linwood no more, all the other places that we lost. We can't lose any more. We have to say to Westminster and to Holyrood, the people of Scotland have had enough. It is time for independence. This year, that 19th of October 2023 remains on the cards if Hamza Yusuf has got the courage of his convictions and he's not going to be the continuity man. Scotland demands it.
On that, coming to our last thing, just for I saved this one up for you, Yvonne. Talking of the Greens and Maggie Chapman, MSP. I know you'd rather wouldn't, but she wishes, she made the statement that she wants Adam Bruce, aka Isla Bryson, to be recognised as a woman. I'll leave it to you. I'm not going to say anything because it's not the watershed. You're on mute. You're always in mute when you're having a good wee rant there.
Well, look at it. It's hardly surprising. Look at who leads the Greens. Patrick Harvey, a man who hates women. I don't know what his problem is. I don't know whether he was spanked as a kid by his mother or he had a nanny who brutalized him. I don't know. But he just seems to spend his entire life trying to punish women. And Phil's laughing there, but something's rocking his boat because he just has this thing against women, and it trickles right down. As I keep saying, these Greens are not the nice cuddly Greens. They're absolutely vicious, Stalinistic, trottish. I don't know. They're just control freaks. And the trouble is, I mean, the SNP these days don't really do policy, but the Greens do, and you know, they're jumping in and driving forward what they want to get to, all the issues they want to get through, and it just, they're so emboldened. They come out with some SH1T decisions, like recognizing Isla Bryson as something that he's not. He's a convicted rapist. He'll never be a woman as long as, you know, he's got a penis. He's a man. He's a bloody man. And I can't wait for the election season to start, because the first politician that comes to my doorstep, the first question I'll say is, what is a woman? And if they can't answer, Ofsky.
Quite right too.
That's what I would advise everybody to do. When they come knocking on your door for your votes, all you ask them is, tell me, what is a woman? Or can a woman have a penis? And see how they squirm around on the doorstep. This nonsense is, the Greens just want to rub our noses in it and humiliate us, and the SNP are allowing it. And of course, one of the things that Humza Yousaf said during his leadership race, one of the biggest swindles in political history, was that the deal that he had with the Greens was worth its weight in gold. Well,
Fool's gold living.
down with dogs, you'll pick up fleas, and you must be scratching at the moment.
And indeed, folks, we'll run our time again. Can I thank you all for your participation and your wise words and your outbursts, which we love most of all. And can I just say to the viewers, I hope you've enjoyed this as much as I have. On Wednesday, last Wednesday, we had our first geopolitical. We thought that was necessary to do. We're doing another one this week. I'm doing it with the help of our Dr. Yvonne here, and a couple of well-known Arab academics who will be joining us to discuss peace breaking out in the Middle East, which to a load of us is great news, but to Phil's favourite friends, the military-industrial complex, bad news. They don't want peace. Does not make money. So that'll be Wednesday, and we'll hopefully be getting that out midday, whatever. But till we see you all again, you and yours, please take care.
Through a Scottish Prism, the programme that is unapologetically pro-Scottish independence and anti-Westminster rule. Everything we say here is viewed through a Scottish prism. Brought to you by Barhead Boy.